Hi everyone, Adal Berman here, CEO of Coachamate. Today I want to talk about a topic that is sometimes a little intimidating for coaches, but it's very important. And this topic is about the legal and financial realities of running a coaching business. Let's jump right in. First of all, I want to discuss the fact that if you are going to be providing professional services and you will be billing for those professional services, you are officially running a company. That's right. And in the United States of America, we are fortunate that any individual may, as a contractor, basically bill for services. Now, that might not be the best way to go about it, just billing in your name, and I will explain that in more detail. Some of the first questions that I want to bring up that should get you thinking about why it is important to watch this video and take care of the legal and financial realities of running your coaching business. Here are some of those questions. For example, what would happen if a client of yours refused to pay? Or worse even, if they requested a refund? Or also interesting is it possible for you to accept checks written to your business name if you operate under a business name versus your personal name? And finally, and I think most importantly, and hopefully one that will motivate you to actually take care of the legal aspects of running a coaching business, this question is, what would happen if someone decided to sue you? Now, God forbid, I really hope that that never happens to you. It is not a fun experience, but anyone can get sued. And the first thing that I want to say about that is that as a coach and as any business owner, actually, you should really put in effort constantly to make sure that no one wants to sue you. Now, it's not necessarily in your power, and it is not your responsibility necessarily that someone would decide to sue you. Oftentimes, it would be a disgruntled person who's very upset about something that may or may not be very related to you and the services that you provided. But regardless, if someone chooses to believe that you are the reason why they have incurred certain losses, they can try to map those losses to a financial reality, and they can decide to sue you. Well, you can try to prevent this by A, being willing to give refunds when people are really upset. Trust me that sometimes it is better to simply give a refund to someone rather than try to grab onto their money and hold it, even if you said that it's non-refundable, just because going to court is not fun. But most importantly, you should deliver the best service possible to any of your clients. As a coach, you are here to serve your clients and to help them live the best life possible. So stay true to that. Honor your clients. When they're upset, be there for them. I have been operating a business as a web developer and website and business consultant for over 10 years now. And trust me, I have dealt with a few difficult personalities. And I have to admit that there are a few times in my career, especially in the beginning, where I just didn't really know how to fix a problem or make it right for them. They wanted something that I didn't know how to deliver, and it was difficult. What did I do? Well, I'll tell you what I did. I really listened to them. I made them feel heard. I was very, very nice to them. And I did everything in my power and did all the research I could to try my best to actually deliver what they needed. And most of the time I did. And that has worked out for me. I can count on my fingers, and that's two clients who haven't paid me in full for the services that I provided. And, it sucks, but it sucks a lot less than going to court. I have personally been brought to court in small claims court by a neighbor. He claimed that I threw a bone over the fence and that his ferocious dogs fought over this supposed bone, and he had to rush him to the hospital, and he tried to get me to pay for that bill. Well, I know that I never threw a bone, but I still had to go to court. And I learned a lot about the law, and trust me that going to court is not that fun. It's not something you should be terrified of, and that should never happen to you. Avoid it at all costs. Sometimes you got to go to court, but if you can avoid it, it's definitely better. It'll allow you to stay focused on what you want to do, which is helping people live their best life. So, without further ado, let's dive in and let's see how we can protect ourselves from the legal risks of running a coaching business. And basically, what it really boils down to is that you want to form a business entity that is separate from you as a person. So, although the easiest business entity to form is that of a sole proprietor, the truth is that sole proprietorship is basically what you're doing when you're billing in your name for services rendered. The one difference being that if you do declare a sole proprietorship, which you can do by going over to your city hall, now with COVID, you'd probably want to look it up online and see how to do it using snail mail. But basically, the only advantage to creating a sole proprietorship is that you can then have a doing business as business name. And that allows you to create a business bank account at the bank of your choice. And although it is great to be officially in business, and I certainly do recommend creating a business bank account, which I will get into later, the truth is that there aren't that many benefits to operating as a sole proprietor when it comes to protecting yourself legally. All right, so let's move on to the next option, which, hint, is kind of the best option. And that is, in the name, it says it's a limited liability company. If the name describes so precisely what you're trying to achieve, then chances are that is the right business for you. Now, once again, I want to remind you that here at CoachMate, we are not attorneys and we are not qualified to provide legal advice. And I personally am certainly not an attorney. And do not take this as official legal advice. Once again, this is not legal advice. I'm not telling you to do this. But what I can say is that it might be a good decision to create a limited liability company. And I can share with you that CoachMate is a limited liability company. And I'm going to explain why, in my opinion, this is actually a good choice. The reason being that, first of all, forming a limited liability company is relatively easy. In most states, you can form a limited liability company within a few days or weeks. And my recommendation would be to use a service such as Rocket Lawyer. Rocket Lawyer is a great service. I'm not affiliated with them and I'm not really pushing them, but I personally do use them. I had a great experience going to their website, checking whether my business name was available in my state, and filing for that business name. They ask you a few simple questions on a form. You fill out those questions and you say who's going to be in the company, whether it's just you or if it's a partnership with someone. And that's a whole other conversation, whether or not you should partner with people. There are benefits, there are disadvantages. I'm not going to dive into that today. But by going to Rocket Lawyer, filling out the few questions, and you're done. You give them a little bit of money. I think you can spend as little as about $150 on it. Or if you want, I did choose to use their service where they receive a legal mail for me, so I don't really get any at my house, which is kind of nice. And if I were to move, it wouldn't really be an issue either, because I do officially run my company from my home, as you can tell, I'm sure, by looking around. Yep. If I were to move, it's kind of nice that they're receiving my mail because it makes moving a lot easier. And in general, also, I have peace of mind that they're going to send me an email if anything comes up, if there's anything I need to comply with. Which leads us to the next reason why forming an LLC is potentially a good choice for you. And that second reason is because operating a limited liability company, aka LLC, is just about as easy as operating a sole proprietorship. In short, you don't really need to do anything to operate it. In some states, you do have to pay some fees. Here in California, those fees are approximately $800 a year. I believe that in some other states, it might be free. There are some people who want to form their LLC in a different state to avoid spending that money. But trust me that if most of your customers are going to be in your state where you live, it really is a lot easier to just form your company in the state where you live. So in my case, I live in California. I'm going to be operating quite a bit in California. A lot of coaches who are working with me are here, even in San Diego, California. And if I'm selling, which I am, to people here in California, then I have to pay those taxes. And even if I had registered my LLC in a different state, such as Nevada, which is where a lot of people choose to form their companies because there are very few, next to no taxes. Well, regardless, when I declare my revenue, if that revenue came from California, I still have to pay taxes, and there are some kind of penalties if you're trying to get around the law. So I just would not recommend trying to form your company in a different state. It's just really making things more complicated than they need to be for pretty much $0 in benefits. So just do it in the state where you are. If it's an LLC, in some states you'll spend some money, but you pretty much don't really have to have any specific operating procedures. You pretty much just pay your taxes. There are maybe a piece of paperwork or two that you have to file once a year. It's really nothing. It's basically super, super easy to form the business and operate the business. And it's pretty cheap. $800 a year is really not that much. You should be charging enough to where that's a drop in the bucket. And the last thing that I want to say about the LLC is the most important thing. So I hope that you've been listening until now. The reason you want to form an LLC instead of a sole proprietorship is because it is limited liability. And what that means is that there is a legal separation between you and your company. So when people are hiring you for services, they're actually hiring your LLC. And that means that if they are unsatisfied with the services that they received, they're not unsatisfied with you personally. They're not taking you personally to court. Even if you get summoned to court, you are summoned to represent your company, not yourself. And if you do end up losing, God forbid, well, your company is losing, not you. And that's really good news because nobody wants to be sued for their personal assets. If you own a house or a nice car or some stocks, or if you just have money in your bank that's under your name, that's yours. It's not your company's. So if a judge does decide that you caused someone to have losses and you have to pay for those damages and maybe even interest on those damages, well, it's your company that pays. And if the amount that is being requested of you is so much that it eats up all of the money in your company and the company goes bankrupt, that is still a lot better than you personally going bankrupt and losing all of your assets. The example that I like to use is a relationship coach who would have posted on social media something along the lines of, I know why relationships fail, and I can help prevent relationship failures and avoid divorce. And then someone comes and hires you, and it doesn't work, and they get divorced. And it turns out they had millions of dollars in assets. They had a beautiful house by the sea and a Rolls Royce and who knows what else. And they lose that. And the judge decides that it was indeed your responsibility. And granted, this is probably a bad example because the likelihood of a judge deciding that is hopefully low. Nonetheless, let's say that happens. Well, if they're coming after you for $1 or $2 million or even just $100,000, you really don't want that coming out of your personal pocket. You want that coming out of your LLC. Worst comes to worst, you bankrupt your LLC, you start another one, you move on. So that is why I personally think the LLC is a great option. Now you're going to be thinking, well, isn't there another option? I thought I heard of forming a corporation. That is very true. You could go and form a corporation, and I sure won't stop you. But I will tell you that a corporation, even though it's similarly easy to form on a website like Rocket Lawyer, it actually is a little bit more complicated still than an LLC. And mostly it is significantly more complicated when it comes to operating it and to filing your taxes, which we're going to get into in a second. Now, there are two types of corporations. I'm not going to spend too much time on corporations, but I do want to say that we have on one end the CCorp, which is the corp kind of. That's the big corporation. Think multinational entity, like a company like Shell, the gas stations. That's most certainly a C corp. And the reason I say that is because the C corp is the one that makes it most easy to have international investors, international owners, international business. Though you could still have international business with even a sole proprietorship. But mostly the C Corp is really if you plan on building a really, really big business and you plan on having stocks. If you want to go into the public market and people are going to be investing in, Coach Joe's stocks, just like they would in Google or Amazon stocks, then knock yourself out, build a C Corp. But it's a lot of trouble. Operating a C Corp, you basically kind of need your own personal attorney or at least a CFO. It's really complicated. There are a lot of things you have to do. You have to hold minutes. You have to have meetings, and those meetings are with the board. And even if the board is just you still have to have those meetings every year, and you have to discuss what you're going to do with all the money, and you're going to have minutes, and you have to make decisions and have policies and roles, and everything has to be defined. It's really, really strict. It's not fun. And the other type of corporation is the S Corp. And the S Corp also, you have to have all those meetings and all those minutes and all those things. The S Corp is potentially a little bit easier because with the S Corp, you can elect to do pass-through taxation. And that is what leads us into taxes. So taxes, everyone's got to pay them. And there are really two ways to pay taxes. One of them is you can be taxed twice, basically. And that's where you're taxed once for your business income, so the money that you collect from your clients. And then you're taxed a second time for the salary that you pay yourself. I don't know about you, but that just really intimidates me. The idea of having to pay taxes twice, to have to determine what my salary is and pay myself that salary consistently, give myself my own benefits. I mean, that just sounds really complicated. Personally, as much as possible, I like when money just comes to me and it's my money and I get to decide how I use it. And that is what we call pass-through taxation. And that means that either with an S Corp where you elect to do it, or preferably, in my opinion, with an LLC, it is when, even though you are legally separate from your person as a legal entity, that the company is separate from you, as we discussed earlier, in terms of finances, there isn't as much of a distinction. So it means that all of the money that you receive through your LLC is it's your money, it's income. And all of the money that you spend, as long as it's business related, is a business expense. And the way you'll tally up the amount of money that you're taxed on is you just take the amount of money that you earned minus the amount of money that you spent. So you have your gross income minus your business expenses, and that leaves you with your net income. And the net income is the income that is taxable. Before I dive more into that, I want to say that you obviously want to separate your business finances from your personal finances as much as possible, because when it comes time to paying taxes, the income is pretty simple, because all the income, if you're doing pass-through taxation, that's your income. But when it comes to expenses, you really want to differentiate clearly what was a business expense and what was a personal expense. Okay, so if you're buying a new laptop to operate your business, it's an expensive laptop, it's expensible. You can actually deduct that from your net income, which means that you're deducting it from the taxable income, which is great because you're paying about 25% taxes on your income. So, if you spent $3,000 on a new MacBook Pro, well, you made $10,000 this year. I hope you made more. Let's say you made $100,000 this year if you're doing it right. Now you're being taxed on $97,000, not 100. So you're paying 25% of the 97,000. That is obviously a gross summary. Do not go and quote me on that and come knock on my door if that's not exactly the numbers that come out, but that's approximately more or less how it works out. So you definitely want to separate. If you bought that laptop for your business, that is a business expense. However, if you're a rock climber like me and you went and bought a brand new climbing rope, that is not a expensable expense. You can't claim that that's a business expense. That was clearly for fun. You might try to argue, well, it's meals and entertainment. It's not. Okay, that's a personal expense. And so what I'm getting at is that once you have formed your legal entity, let's say, for example, an LLC, then you have a business name and you have an EIN, so federal tax number, and you can go to your bank and you can open a business bank account. And that bank account is where you're going to put all of your business income, so the proceeds from your sales. And then out of there is where the money for the business expenses are going to come. So if you ever use a debit card, make sure you use the debit card for that bank account. And, while I'm giving you financial advice, something that Timothy Ferriss recommends in the 4-Hour Workweek is that you should be using a credit card as much as possible. You should get the best credit card possible with the best points system. The Chase Inc. credit card, for example, is a really, really good one that I like to use. That's actually what I use for my CoachMate expenses, because then every time you spend money for your business, well, first of all, you're using the business card, which means that at the end of the year, you just tally up how much money you spent on that card, and there you go. You pretty much have your business expenses if all of your expenses came from that card. And then also you get all these points. And so rather than just giving away the money, let's say when you fill your tank at a gas station that has the same price for debit or credit, potentially up to 3 or 5% of the money you spend kind of comes back to you in some weird way through like a point system or a cashback system. So I would really recommend getting a business bank account and a business credit card. And then, I'm sorry, I'm dropping all these names of specific brands. I don't endorse them. They just seem to work really well. Getting a PayPal account for your business specifically is also a great idea, because with PayPal, you can collect payments, either, PayPal payments, obviously, but also it allows you to collect credit card payments. And that is a really good option for your clients who want to pay with credit card. A lot of people have a lot of reasons to want to pay with credit card. So I would definitely recommend also getting a PayPal account. And so that way, when you get to the end of the year, it's really easy for you to tally up how much money you made and how much money you spent. And to make things even easier, you can use some financial software, such as QuickBooks, if you really want to geek out on it and do it right. That is ideal, especially if you're going to hire people and your finances start to get a little bit more complicated. If they're going to be super simple, you can use something like FreshBooks, or for many years, I used something called Outright, which got bought by GoDaddy, which is not my favorite company. I'm not going to talk poorly of them, but one of the reasons I left was that I wasn't super stoked about that, but whatever. Personal choice. The point being, now if you have followed everything in this video, you've got a company, you are legally separate from your company, and you have separated out your finances, which is going to allow you to make your tax declaration really easy at the end of the year. I would recommend using either TurboTax, which is by Intuit, the same company that does QuickBooks. So I'm guessing it's pretty easy to transfer the information from one to the other if you're on that bandwagon. If you're not, TaxSlayer tends to be a little bit cheaper. And another great tip that I can give you to save money on doing your taxes at the end is that rather than going straight to TurboTax.com or TaxSlayer.com and getting started, if you first Google free taxes by the government, or you go to the IRS's website, it's probably like irs.gov or something like that, well, they will have a list of kind of like government affiliate links. And if you click on the link and you get to the TurboTax or TaxSlayer website via that link, you can potentially be declaring your federal taxes for free if it's under, I think, $65,000 net, which if you are doing a good job of expensing your business expenses, even if you made $100,000, you might come in under 65K. So another good tip on saving some money. I will also try to put up some affiliate links of my own and try to get you some coupons for those. If you do want to support me, please click on them and do each other a favor. And that's pretty much all I have to say about finances. There's one last thing that I want to talk about. And even though you have your finances separate and you have your limited liability company, whether it's specifically an LLC or a corporation, I do recommend at least one of those two. There's one last thing that you really, really should get in the habit of doing. This is extremely important, and it is using legal contracts. A simple contractor agreement can be created and then edited to your needs using a service such as Rocket Lawyer that I recommended earlier, or you can try to Google one. I wouldn't really recommend writing your own. You could potentially write a little bit of your own language into a template that you find elsewhere. It might not hold up in court, but you could also hire an attorney, which is probably the best thing to do to create your own contract. Although there are so many templates out there, there are so many coaches. I'm going to try to find one and make it available to you with the disclaimer that, I don't provide legal advice. I'm not responsible if that contract doesn't work for you. But I'll try to provide one in this course. But there are really two main reasons that you want to be having all of your clients systematically signing a well-written service agreement contract. Reason number one, back to the legalities and getting sued. If your contract says clearly what you are providing and what you're not providing, it gives you such a better position in court, even if it doesn't guarantee that it will protect you. The fact that someone signed a contract that said, for example, I'm not responsible whether you end up getting divorced or not, and whether that ends up costing you any financial losses, is definitely going to be a good point on your side. The judge is going to see that. Trust me, it's going to make a difference. I'm not saying it's going to win your case, but it's going to make a difference. I'm pretty confident on a personal, non-legally binding way. The other number two reason that it's a great idea to get everyone to sign a contract is because when someone signs a contract, it has a psychological effect on them. They have put their signature on a piece of paper that says clearly what is going to happen. The probability that someone goes and actually, makes a claim or holds a belief or sues you in a way that contradicts something that they actually signed on a contract is really low. And trust me that the probability that you're going to get paid when you deliver your services to someone who signed a contract that states that they're going to pay you is way higher. I've been in business for over a decade, and trust me that those who sign contracts, they typically follow through. And so it's really important to sign contracts for both legal and psychological reasons. Do yourself a favor, get yourself a nice contract. I'm going to try to provide one here and get people to sign them. You can either get them to sign it in person using a wet signature with a pen, or once again, not to push Rocket Lawyer, but they're pretty awesome. And they do have a service that, just like HelloSign or DocuSign, allows you to upload a document, say which fields need to get signed, and send emails to both you and the other person, your client, requesting a signature. And then we'll even save the signed copy in their platform, and that's going to give you a legal advantage if ever you need it, which, God forbid, you shouldn't need it, because you listened to the advice that I gave you at the beginning of this video, which is honor your clients, do everything you said you're going to do, and manage their emotions. As a business owner, your client is, it's someone that you should really cherish, you should treat well. And trust me that life will reward you for you treating your clients in a very VIP fashion. I would not be where I am today if I had not treated every single one of my clients like pretty much the most important person on earth. And that's what I want to do for you. And that's why I'm teaching you these things. I want you to thrive, not survive. You're a coach. Go out there, make a difference, help someone live a better life and be happier and healthier, whatever it is you specialize in. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'm so excited that you're here, and I'm really excited to teach you to the next lesson. That's it for today. Over and out. Thanks for watching.